Welcome to the Business of Esports podcast, where we explore the intersection of business and esports, the fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation. Please welcome your hosts, Arda Okal, William Collis, and Paul Dawalibi. The Business of Esports podcast begins now.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Business of Esports podcast. We thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Arda Okal. I am here in New York City with Paul Dawalibi, and I believe in Providence, Rhode Island, via Skype, is William Collis. Did I get that right, William? Providence?
That is exactly right.
All
Providence,
right.
the creative capital of America.
Well, exactly, yes. The esports hub of America, according to William, is Providence, Rhode Island.
That's right. Yes. Hey, don't joke, my friends. Do not joke. You have the influencer of influencers chilling on the east side here. So
exactly. Well, the mecca of esports, as far as business is concerned, is between your ears right now in this podcast, and we thank you very much for rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Every time you leave a 5-star rating and a review, a written review, it helps others, esports fans, business enthusiasts, whoever they might be, helps them find the podcast. So we thank you very, very much. Also, before we get started, follow us on Twitter at BizEsports, and don't forget that every single day on our website, on the blog, thebusinessofesports.com, we have a daily news cycle. You can check it every single day. You'll see all the big business news items of the day, including ones that we talk about on this podcast, and we have a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, Mr. Collis, let's start with two topics that directly relate to you, sir, including...
I knew this was coming.
Yeah,
here we go.
Of course it's coming, because we got to talk about it. We have somebody who is completely endemic to Hearthstone, completely endemic to Heroes of the Storm, and we got two big news items from there. Let's start with the fact that an old friend of many people, especially if they enjoyed card games, turn-based games, Magic the Gathering. Haven't heard that in a while, but guess what? $10 million says they're making a big splash in esports in 2019. Now you, sir, as somebody who is heavily invested, heavily involved with Hearthstone, when you heard this figure, $10 million, and the fact that Magic the Gathering has essentially overnight become one of the highest prized esports, what did you think?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie here. I was pretty thrilled for a couple reasons. I mean, personally, for people who don't know me, I am about the biggest fan of Magic the Gathering there is. I've been playing that game since the original revised set hit, maybe a little bit before. I remember the very first pack of Magic cards I opened. I am a serious hardcore collector of Magic. I think I have complete sets for pretty much every set from revised on. I have all the competitive modern decks, competitive legacy decks. I mean, I am into this game. So I had been hoping and praying for years that Magic would make a big push into esports. I was thrilled to see this announcement, and I was thrilled for a couple reasons. One, because it's such a fantastic statement. It's not $1 million in prizing, $2 million in prizing. I mean, it's very clear that they're consciously coming out and saying we're going to be the highest, amongst the highest prized esports. So I loved the size of the announcement from just a PR perspective. I loved it from, personal and business perspective. It gives me an excuse to use, my pro team and to look at Magic Arena very, very seriously in a way we otherwise wouldn't have before. Because obviously when you see a prizing figure that size, it's not just the prizing that draws you in. It's the confidence and the strong signal that sends from the publisher standpoint that this is a game that's going to be invested in and grown. So it gave me an excuse to sort of start to marry my personal love of the card game with the business side. And I mean, lastly, it's just good for esports. Look, I mean, I would like it if every esport had 10 million in prizing, because it means the space is growing and, the games are thriving. It's just anytime the prizing pool goes up in the space we're in, it helps everybody. And so that, for that general rising tide floats all the boat reasons, I was thrilled as well too.
So from a personal standpoint, the fact that you have such an emotional connection to Magic the Gathering, this is great news. But how about from a business standpoint? Because you are heavily involved in the Hearthstone space right now. So what does this mean for you from a business standpoint?
Well, I mean, look, it makes Genji look extremely seriously at opening a Magic Arena team. I don't know quite what that means yet. I imagine there are many others who are many other organizations that are seeing the same thing. They're seeing the strong signal from the publisher, and they're saying this is a game that could be worth us investigating. But I imagine what we will see is we'll see a lot of organizations move into this game over the next 3 to 6 months. I mean, $10 million in prizing is enough to draw pro players in, and where the pro players go, the orgs will follow.
Do you think that we will see a lot of professional Hearthstone players completely quit Hearthstone as a result and move to Magic?
I never like to talk about one game cannibalizing another game, because I think the reality is people play these games because they love them. If you're a big Hearthstone fan and you're playing lots of Hearthstone, it's not like you're going to love Hearthstone less if there's pricing, higher pricing somewhere else. And, let's be honest, if you're just following the money, we'd all be playing Dota because that has the biggest prize pools of all time. So, personal preference matters here. Look, certainly does that mean pros who are on the cusp, maybe they're deciding between focusing on Hearthstone or another CCG, it'll have them look more closely at Magic Arena. Certainly, if there are pros who are, who maybe are having struggling in Hearthstone, it might make them look at giving Arena another look. But I think it's more likely that this is going to grow a new audience and cement the existing audience for the game. And let's remember, it's not like every single pro in the world out there today for CCGs exists and is playing Hearthstone. There are new pros born every day and new people who decide to get serious about esports every day. And I think it's likely Arena draws that pool.
All right. So, Paul, when you hear this, you see $10 million attached to one game in 1 year. From a business standpoint, as a venture capitalist, does this perk your ears? Does this interest you? Or are you still in the mode of, let's wait and see?
I think we're going to look back on these kinds of announcements and it'll be quaint. $10 million, right? I think 5-10 years from now, we're going to look back at this and go, man, only 10 million? Like, it seems pathetic by today's standards. So I'm not jumping out of my seat because of the $10 million prize money. I think it's obviously a huge amount of money, and it's an incredible statement on the state of esports. I think what's more interesting for me here is, can the market really support this many card game esports? I get battle royale or first-person shooters. They lend themselves very well to a spectator sport, and I get card games can as well. But can the market support Magic, Hearthstone, Artifact? Is there enough space from an esport audience perspective for all of these to survive and thrive?
But I think, and just to be gentle here, I think this is you being more of a shooter fan, right? Like, you're more of a shooter fan, and so I think for you, you can see how a Fortnite and a Call of Duty can coexist, right? Because to you, those look like very different experiences. I think to an avid CCG player, you'll look at Hearthstone and you'll look at Magic Arena and you'll see different aspects of both. You'll see different reasons to appreciate the different games.
Do the audiences overlap, though, William, in your mind? Like, is it the same fan or is it a totally different fan base?
I suspect there is a fair amount of overlap, right? Because again, just like if you're a first-person shooter player and you like Call of Duty, you probably paid attention to PUBG. I think here, if you're a Hearthstone player, you like CCGs, you're going to pay attention to Arena. I also do think Arena is a little bit unique in that, remember, there's a huge paper card game here, right? Like, Magic the Gathering is a huge offline,
Sure.
paper business. I think there's a huge new audience who's going to look at the digital product now from the paper game. Because remember, Magic has had Magic Online, which was a different digital expression that was very, very true to the paper game. And it was, be honest, it was not the best experience. It was an experience for the hardest of hardcore. It was a little slow, a little clunky. It did a great job of simulating tabletop Magic. It just simulated it very, very slowly and excruciatingly exactingly. I think there's going to be a huge pull into Arena from just the people who wanted a better digital experience, like Duels of the Planeswalkers, which was an Xbox and Steam game that simplified Magic and made it more user-friendly, wanted that experience on a competitive level and now have it with Arena. So yeah, I mean, but yes, there is overlap. But if you're asking me, do I think, that you can play two CCGs just like you can play two shooters, just like you can play two RPGs. And certainly you can follow and view to CCGs. Just like, look, I will watch Call of Duty, Fortnite, and PUBG, events or tournaments or streamers, and I'll move seamlessly between them. So I don't think there's as much cannibalization risk here as you might think, particularly because of the paper game that can drive users in. But I do think it's something I felt for a long time, which is CCGs are a big, broad category of game with a lot of strategic depth, and they deserve the title variety that shooters and other genres have enjoyed. And now we finally see, I think, publishers waking up to that and providing that.
So last question for both of you about this topic. How much of this will have to do with that shiny prize pool figure? Paul, you talked about how $10 million will seem quaint in a few years, but correct me if I'm wrong, William, but the prize pool for Hearthstone is not $10 million. So
No, it's not. I mean, it's still significant. I apologize off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact figure, but it's still a significant prize pool.
But what I'm saying is this going to be a race now? In order for Hearthstone to compete, is it just going to simply be whoever has the largest prize pool essentially becomes the prestigious #1 esport in the CCG space?
No, again, because I think, remember, people play these games first and foremost because they love the games. Right. So look, basketball may be better compensated than hockey. We still have people being hockey pros, it because they love hockey. It's a similar thing here. Do I think on the margins it will draw people one way or the other? Yes. But do I think overall, that the health of one game is going to be significantly impacted? No, I think it's just reflecting that the CCG market had potential for bigger and multiple titles to dominate it, just like shooters, just like RPGs, just like single player adventure titles. And we're seeing that happen now. It's good. It's good. It's a broadening of a genre that was a fan favorite for many years.
William, do you think we'll see more offline experiences becoming esports? Do you think this is a bit of a statement of things to come? Like, will we see Settlers of Catan, the esport? Will we see?
I would totally compete in that. Are you kidding me?
Monopoly, the esport.
Well, guys, now you're going into danger zone with me, because there's already an avid community of people who play board games online with things like tabletop simulators.
They're the best.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see that, but I think, I'll be honest, and here I'm going to be throw my flag down. Catan is a great game. I don't think it holds up as an esport. I think it's a possibility some savvy person takes the core Catan ideology and converts and modernizes it into a more digital-friendly competitive experience. But I do not think direct swaps of board games to digital experiences work. And I think, by the way, the proof in the pudding of that is Magic: The Gathering. They had a direct swap of a physical card game. It was Magic Online. It was great for hardcore users who wanted an exact simulation of the physical card game. It wasn't good for everybody else. Magic Arena is not an exact simulation of the physical product. It has key differences that make it more digital friendly. So, I think that the lesson here is, if something's successful offline in a paper or a tabletop format, that's great. It might have the seeds to grow into something different, but it has to be approached as a new product that uniquely takes advantage of digital media.
All I'm saying is that at the World Connect 4 Championships, I think I have a shot.
Well, but
really, I'm just throwing that out there is all I'm saying.
But that goes the thing about pricing, right? Is so Connect 4 and
the pricing's going to be $7 and maybe a hot dog, but I'm still winning.
To the organizers of the World Connect 4 Championship, you can reach Arda at...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Find us on Twitter. All right, let's move on topics. Actually, William, the other heavy topic that we definitely want your opinion on. We'll get to that in a little bit, because I want to bring in Paul for our next topic, which is Fortnite addiction. So we've seen a lot of articles in the last week or two regarding Fortnite addiction and how Fortnite addiction is real. In more generally speaking, video game addiction, and that parents are failing to take responsibility. This is a narrative that has really started to creep into at least video game news cycles and maybe even into the mainstream. So Paul, let's talk about this a little bit. Just the idea of video game / Fortnite addiction. And we've seen this in definitely many realms. In sports even, we've seen professional sports teams ban video games while on the road. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you're seeing these kind of articles, do you think there is a true problem here that we have yet to address, or do you think people are blowing things out of proportion?
I think it makes for sensational news stories. I in fact hate seeing these stories, because every time I read one of these, I go, man, this is such clickbait, first of all. And second of all, this is a journalist trying to get views, really. And mostly because it's the oldest argument literally in this industry. Like since Doom, maybe even before Doom, since like Wolfenstein, or people have been saying video games are bad for kids. They'll make them aggressive. It's horrible for their minds. The reality is, though, people have been saying that about everything new. So rap music was bad for kids. TV was bad for kids. It messed with their minds. Like literally, the media is really good at demonizing any new form of entertainment without really digging into what it's all about, and because it makes for a sensational news story. So do I think there are edge cases where there are kids that are seriously hurt, quote unquote, from video games and addiction to video games? Sure. But I think you find those edge cases everywhere. You probably find a kid who was addicted to basketball and would go out at night and not do his homework and shoot baskets all day long. Like, I don't think anyone did a news story about that. And I think you can find demonization of video games anywhere.
That's interesting you say that, because a kid that's shooting the basketball outside for all hours of the day, I can give you a hockey example. A kid that puts on a pair of skates as soon as they get home from school and plays until their parents literally beg them to come inside, that's seen as passion. That's seen as, oh, this kid is pursuing their dreams or doing something great. Whereas if that same amount of time was poured into a video game, perhaps it would not be seen the exact same way. In fact, some people would go so far as to say that that's a waste of time and this kid is ruining their lives.
Yeah, and I think it's just the product of old-fashioned thinking. That's all. It's really
William?
I also think it just underrates it also underrates the positive experiences people have with gaming. Like, gaming has had a hugely positive impact on my life. I love it. And it's made me a better person, and it's taught me things about myself, and it's built friendships. Like, it's not just a sum between negative and zero. There's a positive weight on the other end of the scale too. And the fact that we're even talking about games being addictive or other things. Yes, I'm sure for some people they go too far, they push too much, but some people watch too much TV, some people drink too much alcohol, like we don't discard, movies or television or, wine as an institution just because there's a potential for abuse. With anything that's powerful and compelling, and particularly story-driven media, with anything like that, there's a risk for addiction, but that's because they're powerful, engaging media.
We're not necessarily talking about Netflix addiction. We call it binge watching, and it's a positive thing.
Yeah, sure. And honestly, well, exactly. I'd argue something like Netflix addiction is way worse, if I'm being honest, because that's so passive. That's just consumption. That's you turning off your brain and being piped data. The thing about games is they're interactive. They're requiring choices and decisions on the part of a user, particularly esports. Like, my brain is working overtime when I'm playing Hearthstone cards. I'm running math. I'm calculating attacks. I'm thinking through strategies. It's an active experience. That has to be better. Playing 2 hours of Hearthstone has to be better for me than watching, the stand-up live special on Netflix number 2342.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Hassan Minaj is pretty funny, though. Just for the just saying.
For
the record, he is pretty funny. I do watch his stuff on Netflix.
We could have a whole
conversation. That's a whole separate conversation. I will say this, though, from the clickbait perspective, just coming from a media angle, what strikes me the most is the fact that it's not gaming addiction in the title, it's Fortnite addiction. The word Fortnite there really adds to the whole clickbaitiness of the situation, because Fortnite is almost a buzzword for people with children who believe that they play too much Fortnite. That becomes a rallying cry. Yeah. And a way for people to say, no, I'm going to click on this because I too have a Fortnite problem. Video games wouldn't be as punchy for people to click on it as Fortnite is.
The media always has a target in entertainment. There's always something that's just easy for them to go after.
Yeah. Let's change topics. All right, William, let's dig into this. I know you know this is coming.
Let's not.
So we just saw just a random bomb, just an email bomb almost from Blizzard. Just came out and said, hey, we're going to have a couple changes here. Actually, you know who I blame, William, is you for this, because last podcast you lamented how you couldn't get to platinum status in Heroes of the Storm. Right?
That's right.
And now I'm starting to think maybe you got so on tilt and you rage quit the entire industry. And you said, if I can't get there, nobody is. And so the whole esports ecosystem for Heroes of the Storm is gone.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that. So let's be clear what the announcement is. So Blizzard.
Does this mean if I don't place GM in Overwatch this season that Overwatch League will shut down?
It could be possible.
Do we have this power between the three of us?
A lot more is going to shut down than just Overwatch League if you don't play.
So break it down for us, William. What exactly happened with Heroes of the Storm in esports?
Look at, and here I have to put on, I'm going to wear two hats here. I'm going to wear a fan hat because I really am a fan of this game. I truly am. I thought Heroes of the Storm was a brilliant game. So I'm going to wear a fan hat and I'm going to wear a business hat. So let's go over the announcement and then I'll react in two ways. So the announcement was Heroes of the Storm esports is essentially gone. There is going to be no sort of, formal pro competitive scene next year. And there's not going to be Heroes of the Dorm, which was the very successful, but to my understanding, collegiate tournament that was run by TESPA to try to draw, new players and particularly collegiate age players into the game. So they're also, I think this is paired with the announcement that developers are rotating off Heroes of the Storm to other titles. So presumably it's both a sort of end of the formal esports support and also a little bit of a de-resourcing of the game itself. Okay, so that's the announcement. So let me react to it. As a fan, I am heartbroken because I really thought this was a brilliant game. And it's sad for me to see a game that I truly love, probably pretty much more than any other game in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, this was a really special game for me. It's really sad for me to see a game I really loved, being not killed but de-emphasized, and certainly having its pro scene significantly reduced. So there's that, right? From a business perspective, putting on my business hat, I'm of two minds. One mind is I get it. Like, everybody who played Heroes of the Storm knew Heroes of the Storm was probably not the most popular game in the world. I still have the impression it was relatively successful. For a publisher other than Blizzard, it might have been considered a strong success. But when you're talking to a publisher that makes both Hearthstone and Overwatch, I definitely understand that this is a lower priority title for them. And I understand the desire to shift resources and talent to games with larger fan communities, because it's going to allow those talented developers and those dollars to go to work for more people. So that makes a ton of sense. So that's the positive side of the business hat. And, I can't say if I was in the same position at Blizzard, I probably would have made a similar call. I am concerned about what it means for the Overwatch League.
Why?
Because if you think about it, if I'm putting on my, Blizzard hat here, I would say the most important is having the League succeed right now. And corporately, that appears to be their highest priority. This is essentially saying, as a publisher, we are willing to step back from a game that doesn't quite get the traction, that doesn't quite get the fan engagement. We're willing to pull the esports funding, the rug out from sort of the esports scene, if you will. Well, what does that mean for Overwatch? Because previously, sort of one of the things I'd understood about Blizzard, I think fans had understood about Blizzard, is they really stay by the titles, thick or thin, right? Well, now does that mean if Overwatch has a down year, does that mean Overwatch is at risk for being de-resourced? Does that mean, if Overwatch, has, a drop in viewership, we're going to see dollars substituted to Hearthstone? It's just, I'm surprised that business decision was made, just given that it shows vulnerability on Blizzard's side to sustain an esport. And by extension, that casts aspersions and a shadow on the Overwatch League. Now, there's plenty of other arguments you could make differently, and there's plenty of other ways you could frame it, but that's partly how I perceive it a little.
Paul, do you see this from a dollars and cents perspective, or is there some emotion in there for you when you read this?
There's zero emotion for me because I'm not a Heroes of the Storm player. So,
but what he just said about Overwatch, so you are an Overwatch fan.
I am an Overwatch fan and an Overwatch player. I think if we look at the 30,000 foot view here, what really scares me from a dollar and cents standpoint is anyone investing in teams today, leagues today, that are attached to a publisher, which is just about all of them actually, your dollars are basically at risk. You're at the mercy of the publisher. It's a little bit of a closed garden right now. It's a closed ecosystem. It's the Macintosh version of esports, right? Where the publisher owns the game, owns the league, controls the league, and can shut it down tomorrow if they want. That amount of power in one entity scares me as an investor. And I think for esports to be very viable long term, I don't think you can have that kind of centralized power. I don't think you can have someone just able to shut down a Heroes of the Storm league because the publisher pulls its funding or pulls its support. And that bigger picture is really what concerns me. And I think we need to go to a more open ecosystem where the publishers have less power. Now, the downside of that is not as tight integration, which means you may not get as good of an experience. But I think that works itself out over the long term. What I'm really curious about here and would love to explore this is, why did they shut this down, and where are those resources going if it really is a question of moving those resources somewhere else? If it's Diablo Mobile, then the Blizzard guys are out to lunch. If this is them cost cutting because Blizzard Activision is suffering, I don't know. But
is it a monetary thing or is it a leadership thing?
It seems like a very small amount of dollars in the grand scheme of Activision Blizzard to maintain a Heroes of the Storm league. Like, William, do you know what the prize money was for the?
I don't, but I mean, like, Heroes of the Dorm, which is, and I agree with you, Paul. I mean, Heroes of the Dorm, the total pricing for that was basically what, I think a year of college, so $40,000, $60,000. I mean, it's a rounding error in the budget of the company. Yeah, I am surprised, right? I wonder if, again, and I would think I would want to be keeping the gas on the activities, because again, my understanding is it's not like Heroes of the Storm had one user, me. I think it had a successful user base and would have been a hit, by the standards of many publishers in many games, right? So, I'm not saying that, it's the wrong decision by any means. I mean, the only people who know are the people who are internal to Blizzard and looking at the numbers. But you're right, for the small amount of cost it would take to maintain something, it is surprising. Then again, I do sort of see an argument where if you want to move top talent, right? If you decide that you have a guy who's an amazing, or a girl who's an absolutely amazing game balancer, coder, developer, what have you, and you'd rather have them work on Overwatch or Hearthstone, and as a result of wanting to move that talent so they reach more people, you're asking yourselves a question about, well, are we going to be able to sustain this game in a way that's going to support an esports scene? Then maybe it makes more sense if it's a talent-driven decision. But
they're definitely not working on Overwatch.
I wonder if they're working on new titles or just new ideas. I mean, how often do we even hear about any of the esports that are Blizzard related? Other than Overwatch and Dota 2, or even other than BlizzCon.
But is it Pride, maybe? Is it
it's
Blizzard?
Definitely it has to be a Pride.
Blizzard saying, we lost, we couldn't beat Dota, we couldn't beat League, we tried, and it's less embarrassing to just shut this down than to, continue with this and no one cares.
Right.
Well, let's be very clear. I mean, Here's the Storm is not shutting down. They're still planning to maintain the game.
Yes.
It could also be the fact that look at who's playing the games. I mean, let's be honest. I'm the person playing Here's the Storm. I love that game.
But to be fair, we had such a compelling story in StarCraft this year with Cyril winning, right?
Yeah.
But like, how many people were talking about that? Truthfully, in the largest circles of esports, it may have been one story. And then all of a sudden, did that motivate people to suddenly be interested in StarCraft esports?
But kind of let me finish my point, because I think it's going to address it. So what I was saying is, I think Heroes of the Storm did position itself, I think in many ways, as a more casual, approachable MOBA. It had shorter games, a less punishing laning phase, team leveling, so you couldn't, fall behind and be too much of a drag. Maybe the answer is the right way to maintain Heroes of the Storm is in a more casual way. And esports, look, you're talking to somebody who loves the game and who couldn't even get platinum. Let's be honest. That's not exactly somebody who's going to be showing up to a championship tournament. Maybe that's the way the organization or the game needed to be, maintained. And maybe it's just a reflecting of its user base. Because again, my impression was there was not a small number of people playing the game. My impression is it was a relatively successful game by many publisher standards, just not the titan that's Activision Blizzard. So we'll see.
Yeah, this is a story that we're definitely going to be following as it unfolds, and so we'll just leave it there for that conversation. Our last topic on this podcast has to do with gaming awards. There were 2 of them in the span of a week, believe it or not. Did you guys have a chance to watch either of them?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Both, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, watch both of them. Okay.
I recorded them, so thankfully.
You recorded them, okay.
Paul's a legend, let's be honest.
Paul's a legend. So he watched both of them full. William, did you watch both of them?
I watched both of them, but I wasn't as hardcore as Paul. Paul watched them both in slow motion.
That's it.
That's how much he
to get
me.
all the delicious nuance of these.
I was getting updates, so I'm involved with the classic Tetris. There's a growing esports folks. Okay. The money
I love classic Tetris too. Are you serious?
Yeah, buddy. I'm one of the broadcasters. In fact, the money that just left Heroes of the Storm, maybe we can bring it to classic Tetris, people. It's a natural progression.
You and I are going offline because
let's talk about it. Yes.
Is brilliant.
We will. So anyway, the reason I mentioned that is because Classic Tetris, believe it or not, got nominated for an award at the Gamers' Choice Awards, the ones that were on CBS. And so we had a Classic Tetris contingent there, and it was actually recorded before the air date on Sunday, December 9th. So I was getting updates on how everything was. And what they decided to do was not reveal any of the winners on the day. It was sort of like and the winner is ... and then no reveal. And they were going to reveal it after the fact on the broadcast, so I suppose they could keep the secret, whatever their decision was. But spoiler alert, Classic Tetris didn't win, but we were up against Drake and Ninja playing Fortnite, so I'm pretty sure we're going to doomed to lose anyway. But the reason I want to bring this up is because to me, these 2 awards, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards and the CBS Gamers' Choice Awards, are such an interesting dichotomy of game awards. Jeff Keighley has been doing it now for 5 years, and that one was very much like an Oscars-style presentation. It was a little bit more formal. Or no,
more about the games.
It was definitely a lot more formal than the Gamers' Choice Awards presentation was. I believe, if I'm not wrong, the Gamers' Choice Awards were put on by the same people that put together the Teen Choice Awards. And you definitely got that vibe when you were watching the broadcast on CBS. Now, let's talk about comparing those two, because we could be seeing the growth of game awards in general. And Jeff Keighley definitely took notice of the Gamers' Choice Awards. The Gamers' Choice Awards referenced the Game Awards on the broadcast. So, Paul, let's start with you. What did you make of these 2 awards, and who would you give the edge to after seeing them both?
Okay, I'm going to avoid your question be a bad co-host.
Great question, host.
But I am going to say they both need to die.
Wow, why?
I hate award shows, and I'm not alone. And there's been a lot of talk. It's been in the news about, I think, the Academy Awards, about the Oscars and their difficulty finding a host. And I think Kevin Hart was sort of kicked as the host. Yes. And Seth MacFarlane came out and said, this is a tough job hosting these things, but it's a dusty format. He called it a dusty format. It's a format from the 1950s, literally. And I don't know why something as, call it avant-garde, digital, cutting edge as esports would reduce themselves to this dusty, cringy, boring format.
Now, just to be fair, these are video games in general. Like, both of these awards had esports components, but they very much felt like afterthoughts in both broadcasts.
Yeah.
The esports awards
Look, the Game Awards felt a lot like product placement for new games.
A lot of new games.
And the Gamers' Choice Awards felt like just a cringe fest of streamers and brands that wanted to associate themselves with those streamers. And in neither case did I watch and go, man, this was so entertaining. Like, I really enjoyed this last hour. I didn't leave either of them thinking like this was great entertainment. And so the question I ask myself is, why are they doing these?
Recognition? You don't believe in the power of recognition and something to strive for?
Other
than money?
To encourage the industry? Is that it?
No, because people are trying to find ways to get esports on traditional TV. And I think you have a dated view from the traditional TV guys who see something like an award ceremony format and get it. And this is a logical way to bring esports to their viewers or video games to their viewers. I don't think it's more complex than that. I think I don't even think the award format makes sense for games because games are not like a movie. You know, the Oscars make sense. The movie comes out, it's done. Nobody goes back and updates the movie, right?
Do you guys watch the Oscars beginning to end?
No, nobody. I mean,
I follow Oscar tweets from beginning to end, but I don't watch the broadcast from beginning to end.
I don't think I know a single person who's like, other than talking about the results the next day because it's in the news.
Unless you're in the movie industry, then you do, of course. But that's my point is that shouldn't there be awards for people in that industry? Like, how many of the esports awards did you watch this year? I watched the esports awards, the ones that happened in London.
Look, I watch them because I work in this industry. Right. I operate in this industry. Right. But if they didn't exist, I wouldn't be like, it's not like I wouldn't know what to do with that hour of my life. I just don't see the point other than, and I think, William, this is the point you're making, which is some traditional TV executive said, how can we do esports? Let's do an award show. That's easy. You build a stage, you get a couple of guys to present awards, and it creates buzz, right? You get a lot of buzz around winners.
So what would you do in place of an award show then?
I don't know. I don't know why the award show needs to exist.
Because people like recognition. When they get a trophy, they put. You have trophies up on your on your bookcase right now. I do too. I want to win an Emmy award for broadcasting, right? Like everyone has some sort of trophy they want to strive for. I'm sure people are very proud to have won a game award trophy.
I will gladly take the trophies. I just think it's great to have as an industry dinner. Why televise it when I mean, the more interesting was I was watching the commentary on Twitch of people watching both award shows, in fact. And Twitch chat is toxic to begin with. So, it's maybe not the best the best representation of what fans thought of these shows. But overall, no one was really liking this. No one was saying, wow, this is so entertaining. It was a lot of cringe. It was a lot of cringe.
Is some of that jealousy?
From me?
No. For people in the Twitch chat, just like, hey, I
like I'm not Ninja, so this is cringy.
And I'm not nominated for anything, and I'm not in the industry, and I didn't work hard all year to be recognized by my peers.
I think your point on recognition is a good one. Recognize the people who do good things. I just think televising it for the world doesn't add anything. I don't think people are entertained by it. I think it makes us look old as an industry. I know they're striving for legitimacy and striving for mainstream appeal, but I think it makes us look old.
Did we need a Game Awards on network television, William?
No. I mean, no, we did not. But it goes back to what Paul was saying. I don't think we need the idea of Game Awards don't make sense. What I was saying kind of before is like movies exist as a point in time. You can give the award to, Crash or, I don't know other movies or hits. I'm like blank on movies or Lord of the Rings, have you, because they come out once and they're a concrete thing and they're done. But you can't give an award to games, or at least not in this old format, because games are constantly changing. Like, how do I put, the content upgrades that went into League of Legends this year against the innovation that was Fortnite? Or how do I put the, the powerful single player experience of a title like Prey? How do I weigh that against the fact that it's also had a massive improvement with its Mooncrash DLC? Like, where does that fit in? So I think it really is, it's a bit meaninless to this old format. I would get it if it was different. I would get it if it was like the categories had changed to more reflect how games worked. I would get it if, the user base, I would get it if it was more around the personalities or the stars rather than the titles themselves. Those things would make more sense to me. But the current format just feels really, and candidly, we don't need it anyway. Like in my mind, the awards charts for the game is the matchmaking queue times in esports. Guess what? If your game's a hit, the matchmaking queue times are small, and we're all happy, and we know that's how your game's successful.
Yeah, I will say this to your point, Paul. It felt like more people were interested in the secrets and the reveals from the video games in both award shows than they were the actual winners of the awards. Like the Super Smash Brothers reveal with Joker from Persona 5, that was a big deal. But on the flip side of that, you have things like the Kind of Funny Games showcase, right? Where that is not an award show. That is strictly, here are 70 games that we want to feature. So I feel like merging those two, like here's an award and then here's a reveal. Here's an award and here's a reveal. And I understand from a sponsorship perspective why that happens, because these games are paying for that time and that helps the ecosystem. But I wonder if that format works. I like the recognition. I like the reveal of secrets, but I wonder if an award show or a night of recognition is the right place for those reveals and secret mysteries to be present.
It's a problem I don't have a good solution for, in the sense that, like you, Arda, I want to win an Emmy or whatever award, right?
Yeah.
But
we will.
but I don't want to watch the Emmys
until we get nominated, and then we're in the audience for the Emmys.
Sure, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But isn't that kind of the weird part about award shows in general, which is you only care if you have something to win. Otherwise, you don't really care.
Or you just read the results the next day.
That's it. And it's because it's water cooler conversation, right? You just don't want to look like you're out of the loop. But people fundamentally don't really care who wins or loses. No one's got skin in the game other than the people nominated.
William, if one of your players wins an award or your organization wins an award, does that help you financially? Does that boost you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously it's good to have recognition, and obviously that means you can get a little more social media traction. You can maybe get a little more, leverage with sponsors. It certainly helps you. Winning the award, it's not winning an award by itself that does anything. It's the increased engagement you get, the increased visibility you get that translates into follows, fans, subs, etc. So in that regard too, I struggle a little, like, were the people watching that award ceremony, did they all go and sub to Ninja afterwards? Did they all go and follow, Shroud on Twitter? Like, I
probably
Googled
think the Muppets. They're like, what's that?
Yeah, I wonder how much lasting impact. Again, it probably really helped with Coca-Cola and traditional sponsors.
Maybe.
I bet they love seeing that you're somebody on an award ceremony. I bet that was a huge hit because they understand that it's traditional, it's good language. I bet it's great in the B2B setting, but on the ground, I doubt it moved the needle very much.
I think this will attract dumb money into esports.
So that's a very good point, because first of all, there was an award show on network television on CBS, and the Game Awards attracted 29 million views. So these are impressive.
Yeah, but
feats.
If you're a super savvy brand, right, and you want to tap into esports, you go and figure out how to do a partnership with Shroud, with Tim the Tap Man, with Ninja, with Dr. Disrespect, something that's really intimate, unique to them, and appeals to Shroud's or Ninja's audience. The dumb money is just going to sponsor an award show and go, yeah, we're doing esports, check the box. And so I think it's a good place to park dumb money for brands.
This conversation can go on for a very long time, but you can join it as well. Why don't you join us on Twitter at Biz Esports? Let us know about any of the topics that we talked about on this podcast, including the last one. I'm very interested to hear from you what you think about gaming award shows. Do you guys watch them? Do you enjoy them? Do you even care about the winners? Do you like the reveals? Do you hate them? Please let us know. Before we go, though, we usually do this at the top of the podcast, but I forgot. So bad host, slap on the wrist for me. Something fun that's happening in your worlds right now. Paul, how about you, man? What are you doing? What's going on?
Gaming. Started my placements on my main account for Overwatch. Playing Ashe.
How do you like Ashe?
She's awesome.
Yeah, Bob?
She's the most fun hero Overwatch has added, I would say, since Anna.
Wow.
Okay. But I will say this. I played 6 games now out of the 10 placements. Every game where we had a Brig and a Doomfist, we won. Every game where we did not have a Brig and a Doomfist, we lost.
Meta forming.
And so I'm totally on team #delete Brig. It needs to go. She needs to go. Out of the game. She's ruining the game.
Completely
That's
gone.
harsh.
Wow.
That's harsh.
Okay. So
Wow.
that's
Get some of
fun, Paul. Let's delete a character. Let's delete a hero from Overwatch.
Get some of the Heroes of the Storm guys working on Brig, and maybe they'll get rid of it.
William, what's fun in your world right now?
Something great that happened to me this week.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, this was a tough week for me, as we already covered. But I'd say the arena prizing. I mean, we already talked about it. But look, when it's your favorite game since childhood, getting a $10 million prize pool for esports, which you love, I mean, that's going to bring a smile to your face. So that easily is my win this week.
William, are we going to see you go pro in Magic?
True story, bro. I actually was very good at Magic.
I wasn't being sarcastic at all. I'm actually genuinely serious because it's not a reflex game. So like you could be 65 and still be a Magic pro.
That's a double dig there, man. Your reflexes stink, William. You could totally play this game.
You're not too old to be good at that game, William. You're like, and honestly, I've seen you play Call of Duty. I mean, it's like literally watching somebody trying to catch molasses with a fan.
No, it's like watching someone playing Magic.
Yeah. Look.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, is there a chance I go pro? You never say never. You never say never. But realistically, it would be a cold day in where before I would stand a chance, because the people who are good at those games are a lot better than me. So I will keep cracking my legacy cube with my buddies at home and jamming my EDH, dragons. And if this means anything to anyone, I'm so sorry and welcome to my club. But no, I'm not going to go pro. Although I will enjoy watching the people who are earning a ton of money being pros now.
Well, on that note, William not going pro, you all can now go home. The podcast is over. We thank you very much for listening. Thanks for rating, reviewing, and subscribing on Apple Podcasts and wherever you get your podcast. If you leave a 5-star rating and a review, it helps others find the podcast, business fans, esports fans. For Paul and William, in case we don't talk to you until the end of the year, happy holidays. Happy New Year. We'll be back with another podcast soon. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Business of Esports podcast. Check us out at thebusinessofesports.com and on Twitter at BizEsports.